Welcome, everybody. Starting right on time today with Ben Cage. If you don't already follow him, subscribe to Ben Cage. It's just first and last name. For once, a normal guy without a weird code name. Ben Cage, Kayge. Twitter, YouTube. He's been making great videos for the ecosystem and comes from a traditional entrepreneurship background. So we're happy to have you here with your unique takes and everything. How you holding up in the bear market, bro?
Good to be here, bro. Yeah, I'm holding on much the same as everyone. I imagine it's never nice to see any kind of dips, right? Whenever an ecosystem, coins that you're into are in stasis, or God forbid they decline a little bit, you don't get those warm, fuzzy feelings. But no, I'm good. I didn't expect anything to move at this point. I think we were a little bit premature, to be honest with you, with the whole kind of general market shift, which has been great. And we know the catalysts that were in place for a lot of that. But yeah, I'm as patient as ever. I'm still convicted in the plays that I'm making. I'm waiting for the actual bull market proper, the summertime period to come in, and then we can start talking about, the gains that we've had. So yeah.
Yeah, and Bitcoin kicks off the whole bull market. Typically, it trickles into Ethereum next, and then altcoins next. And a lot of people are out there saying, "Well, dog with hat went up 10,000 million %," and a lot of people are just sad because prices are going sideways, and this happens in a lot of cycles. Not everything pumps at the same time. We're in peak degen mania phase right now, and a lot of people are salty and angry that they missed out on meme coins. And we see people rushing to chase meme coins, which is fine. If you're going to play them, that's fine, but beware of chasing and buying the top. You can make money on these meme coins. I've done it, but you got to be early, and it's a very flash in the pan kind of thing. So just be careful out there and don't get too bad of FOMO, and don't sacrifice your core bags too much.
That's it. Right? That's it. You honestly, you hit the nail on the head. And it's funny because I've been getting so many messages, as I'm sure you have too. People, both kind of veteran and newer folks into, for instance, the PulseChain ecosystem, kind of getting worried about, has the narrative shifted away? Some influencers and bigger names in the ecosystem, I guess, have almost been forcing narratives that I think are not correct or appropriate for the market, but it's wrapping up a lot of those newer folks into believing that the cycle is kind of prematurely timed, or we're going into the euphoria mode and we've already missed the bull cycle. No, and I think that it is a bit of a catch-22. I think that right now, and I think I've been candid pretty recently in terms of every ecosystem needs a meme culture because memes are a part of crypto. It's a bit of fun. Like you said, though, don't sacrifice your core holdings on these memes. It should be a very small percentage of your portfolio. And just because right now the RH ecosystem is kind of going through that kind of meme stage right now, whatever we want to call it, don't get wrapped up in folks who are building their whole portfolios around these things, because that's not what we got into this for. Serious projects are coming. We have better things in development. I'm assuming, I know of a few, but I'm assuming there are a lot more things coming down the pike that, aren't quite as easy to just flip that meme button and have it be brought to fruition. So these things take a little bit of time. We got a new chain here. And I will say, it's not a great place to feel, again, warm and fuzzy right now. And I get it, because we're seeing price stagnate or even decline, a lot over the last couple of weeks. We're seeing a lot of these meme coins flourishing, or at least pretending to flourish. And so it's creating a bit of a catch-22. It's an atmosphere where, we're suddenly being known as a meme narrative, a meme ecosystem. That's not going to stay around for long. It just happens to be the easiest onboarding narrative right now for new people. And so yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've seen a lot of messages coming in to me, kind of asking a lot of the redundant questions of months and years past. A lot of those kind of typical, I guess, naive questions, and it's concerning. And so it's always important to keep reminding folks out there that there is a lot more stability that should be entering the market. Don't get wrapped up in thinking that PulseChain is just meme mania right now. It's just the latest roller coaster ride that some people are trying to run with as far as they possibly can.
Well, it's not just PulseChain, right? It's Solana and Base, yeah. And those are the two primary chains that we're trying to catch the meme coin wave, because it is the way some people get onboarded. And the memes will always be around, kind of in the background. Narrative cycle, though, and I think it's unfair to say, well, people get they look at the current way things are, and they have this permanence bias, and they can't imagine things changing and being different in the future and value accruing to different things. Like when you look at PulseChain, you've already got a lot of the DeFi protocols built. You know, you've got like leverage trading, you got forked Aave, forked a lot of stuff that's already built. You've got a lot of stuff in progress, things like 0x Coast, you know, fiat on ramp that'll be ready to go in about 2 weeks, actually, ready to onboard a ton of people with centralized fiat on and off ramp just for. And then you've got a lot of stuff to look forward to, like Richard actually beating the SEC. You've got the ETH ETF, which is going to drive a lot of Ethereum interest, which will hopefully trickle into the DeFi ecosystem. And then you've got the whole market spurred off by the Bitcoin pump. So all the pieces are aligning. I think for the positions that you and I are in, PulseChain, PulseX, HEX, maybe INC now too. We got a good comment there. INC, the meme, but with utility. That's the thing too, right? People are like, well, utility doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. Utility is just a different meme. Like these are all just different memes, whether or not you think they matter. Fundamentally, you know, to say something absolutely doesn't matter right now, it just tells me that that's just not where you're looking at right now. Doesn't mean no one will ever care again. And if you really believe no one will ever care about, you know, these core coins in this ecosystem again, why are you still here? You should have dumped your bag already. If you never believed to begin with, if you weren't willing to hold for a couple of years and see it through, I mean, look, I'm not telling people to dump their bag, but you know, people want someone else to tell them why they should buy when they need to really have the conviction on their own why they are holding and what their thesis is, and then see it play out or not play out. And if we are wrong, that's all everyone's individual fault. Nobody presses the buy and the sell button for you, right? That's up to you at the end of the day. Look, things decouple. Okay, things decouple, but be careful of people making absolute statements when they're particularly focused. Of course, a meme coin guy that only does meme coins is going to say nobody cares about anything else but meme coins, because they don't care about anything else but meme coins. And the market currently cares a lot about meme coins. It really does. And it's fun. It's hilarious. I love a good meme coin myself. But do you ever agree that value will accrue back to the long-term layer one chain, the DEX coin, the store value, trustless yield?
100%. 100%. I will say yes. I do. I will value. I mean, the question was, will it, it's like swings and roundabouts, right? As we say in the UK, different horses for different courses. Now, for me, I'm not a big player in meme coins. I'll take a nibble now and again just because it's fun. I'll roll the dice and who knows, right? Maybe you get a lottery ticket win, maybe you don't, maybe you get a couple of X's. Whatever's moving the market at that time, you've got to kind of play to the conditions you're dealt, right? Makes sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head in saying that the crypto market in general, it goes through different stages of cycles. It's not just as easy as boiling it down to this is an overall cycle. Throughout that, you've got to stay relevant and look for whatever, you know, narratives and sentiments are playing at that moment in time. We know that the winds of change tend to come in a more general sense as we hit certain time periods, but different things will always onboard different people. And I'm, as many of you who watch my channel certainly know, that I'm a big believer in big money, big volume that's going to be entering the crypto space for the first time ever to this extent is going to move the price a lot more than anything else. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of these memes, a lot of these traditional, unique selling points that have been touted about the Richard Heart ecosystem in general won't still be valuable to many people. For the retail investors, for the little money that's out there, for the majority of us are out there, yeah, that's still going to be, you know, the big movers. That's going to be the things that matter to us. And so, you know, that we're always going to be a proponent of those selling points. But I do think, you know, speaking of those winds of changes, same with Base, same with PulseChain, you know, newer chains, it's a little bit different with Base because I think they're starting from a place of a little bit more, or a lot of bit more gravitas, having come and been backed by Coinbase, having already onboarded a lot of the, I guess the quote unquote more serious developers, just because it's a little bit easier to put your trust in a brand new chain that's being backed by the biggest exchange in the world, or one of the biggest exchanges in the world, right? And
and the same goes for Solana as well. When Solana's got 22 VCs, Base is backed by the #1 crypto company. It's the primary exchange in the USA. And so, yeah, developers, I mean, a lot of people don't care about the original ethos of crypto, which PulseChain totally fills all those niches, by the way. Right now, the quote unquote big money, right? Or the people that want these big developer grants, right? They're going to Solana and Base, kind of for the reason that Fast Abdul, thank you for the tip there, kind of because of bribes in a way. You are correct. These people are getting treated, paid more highly because they've got this VC money and this Coinbase money. PulseChain doesn't have that, but PulseChain is ready to handle institutional grade money coming over when the time is right. So when do you think that's going to be?
Well, yeah, I just came back from the NVIDIA conference, and really, and I've been talking about this for a while. It's all very well having whatever network you have, right? Whatever experience you have, whatever previous lives that anyone's had, and trying to bring in as much experience as possible into the analysis of like how that market's going to move. And I, having gone there with an ethos really of seeing what it's going to actually take for some of these big companies, these big partners, developers, affiliates, venture guys, banks, what it's actually going to take to convince a lot of these guys to onboard into a brand new ecosystem without the best, I guess, gravitas status, let's call it. I mean, it's very tough to come from a place of trust when we have the situation that we have, and it can be done. And of course, anyone who's gone through the ringer with Pulse, with HEX, with PulseX, especially HEX, we have trust in this ecosystem for a reason. But it's been very interesting hearing a lot of those voices who are a lot bit more traditional in the way that they're analyzing things, the various different trust factors that have to be in place in order for these guys to take the chance on a new ecosystem. And I think, having some of these conversations without divulging kind of too much in terms of what's come of this, but it's very possible that this cycle, at the very least, we start seeing a lot of that traditional money, a lot of that old-fashioned money, let's say, matriculating in a bit more of a direct manner. Now, not just because of the on-ramps. I think that's going to be a massive thing. I think obviously more from a retail perspective than anything else. I think general retail investors having a way into something and then utilizing the sales points that are in place for the whole ecosystem as they are is one thing. And that's fantastic. And that's definitely going to move price. To get the big developers in, or to get the real world value builders that are then, attributing much of the business dynamic to the crypto space, to the PulseChain world. It's a different driver, but that driver is a bit more of an entry point to some of that bigger investment money coming in, right? And so I think as soon as we start to see projects that are checking those boxes as well, that's when I think we'll start seeing a lot more of that volume in larger and larger amounts coming into the ecosystem, just like Base is seeing now. They're not, yes, they're getting a lot of typical retail investment right now as well, but because there's so many serious companies and people affiliated with some of the projects that are being built right out of the gates, and I'm sure Coinbase, who have their fingers in, a multitude of different pies, put their feelers out way in advance, right? Base was coming down the pike. They already had people lined up to start developing and utilizing, in advance of that. We didn't have any of that with PulseChain. So of course, that journey elongates a lot because we're coming out of the gates with something that needs to earn that trust first. The only way in earning that trust first is by having active community members actually going out there, reaching into those networks and looking to convert them, or at least kind of have them allocate certain portions of their effort, their equity, their money into the ecosystem. And I think it's just going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think there's maybe 3 points we could talk about, which that might attract people. Let's just call it big money. I don't want to call it institutional money. Rich guys, right? Richard Hart is always talking about, hey, I'd rather target, send a postcard to the wealthiest zip codes in all of America, because you can get one whale that makes up for 1,000, small retail investors. Now, of course, we are speaking to the retail investor as well. And the savvy retail guys, I think they've already identified this place to be the opportunity. And good if you're still here. If you haven't capitulated and you're still holding, if you're even accumulating more, it's still not too late, in my opinion. But what moves the markets is the big money coming in, whether it's an individual or an institution. So they are attracted to meme coins, possibly. I was just talking to Brock Pierce the other day. Believe it or not, he showed me a meme coin. Believe it or not, right? So like these billionaires, they have a sense of humor, but a lot of the traditional gray-haired TradFi bros, they don't want to report on their taxes that they made 2,000% gains with dick with butt, right? As funny as that is, right? They just don't. Some people don't take that seriously, even though it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because a hilarious meme is If it makes money, it makes money. But some people understand that. Some people are waiting. We do have the serious DeFi protocols already kind of being built, right? We've got the Balancer fork. We've got the GMX fork. We've got Fast Abdul's whipping something up. There's so many that I probably am going to miss right now, but we've got the foundations in terms of the DeFi protocols and the yield farming and the yield generating. We need to realize that yield is still a very attractive offer to traditional conservative big money investors. I really do think that, if you tell somebody, hey, you can make 20% APY over here, that still gets people off. Believe it or not, even though in crypto, they're like, oh, that's nothing. It's all about the meme coin. Who cares about yield? It's like, no, you got to consider that the people with money, if you even tell them, one of the big problems with HEX last cycle was you would tell somebody, oh, this can make up to 40% APY. And they wouldn't believe you because it was too good to be true in their world. Because what kind of bank is offering 40% APY? Oh, it must be a scam. They didn't understand that it was paid out in HEX and had to do with smart contracts and all that. But so we've got the foundation and we've got the yield narratives to attract the people that do care about them, which tend to be bigger and more conservative money players. Now, we also need the on-ramps, which are currently being built, whether that's centralized exchanges, which I know everyone's got mixed feelings about, right? Everyone's got mixed feelings about MEXC, even though I believe it'd be a slight net positive and maybe onboard some of Asia. We've got 0xcoast.com, guys, gainpulsechain.com. Make an account and get 5,000 free coins in my description below if you haven't already, because they've got, I think, 10 banking partners, they said. And they're going to be not a one click, but they're going to be a centralized fiat on and off ramp that stays outside of the flow of funds, meaning you can link your bank account with them, put in your bank money and buy Pulse instantly directly to your wallet without ever having to keep the funds on the exchange. How amazing is that? It's a very innovative fiat on and off ramp. It doesn't try to be holding your funds. It's not a trading platform. It's just, here's how you buy Pulse, PulseX, HEX. Oh, and they have a stable coin if you want to hold their stable coin too. But their stable coin is always redeemable by the money that people put in. You can't mint a stable coin without putting in money to mint that stable coin and back it. So those kinds of protocols are going to be crucial, which those are in progress, right? So you've got, what did I say? What already exists, right? We've got what's already existing, which is DeFi, yield earning, serious quote unquote protocols for the people that care. You've got stuff in progress, fiat on ramps and marketing. You've got future events. These main two future events, in my opinion, are going to be regulatory clarity, specifically with Richard, and also, with the SEC, a little bit more clarity and confidence that he's going to win, even though people on the inside are already pretty confident. And then also the Ethereum ETF, if and when that launches. Maybe it'll launch in May. Maybe it'll take a bit longer. It's going to cause this mad rush into Ethereum. And then when people have Ethereum, hopefully that's one easier step to onboard into real DeFi. It's hard to get Bitcoin into DeFi, right? It's much easier to get Ethereum to trickle across the bridge and all these other routes.
Absolutely. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head a lot there. I mean, what I will say is, I think there may be a little bit of a difference in terms of maybe the way that I would categorize kind of serious money, because to me, especially within an ecosystem, we run the risk of, we've seen a lot of these yield kind of projects coming out of the woodwork, and often they can be construed and they perform as vaporware, right? Because they simply don't have, the substance in place in order to tokenomics on its own often isn't the only thing that could play a part there. And so when I say serious money, maybe I'm looking a little bit further ahead in seeing the correlation of real world value being brought onto a chain and then kind of forming almost part of that core strength in order, and it's a knock-on effect, right? In order for a lot of that yield farming, that mining, that tokenomics, those pumpermentals that have moved the needle in so many other chains, like HEX did initially for, on Ethereum. There's also a downside, more of stuff being built on an ERC20 platform that does a lot of other cool things too. So we have that leeway. I just don't think that those yield farms, those yielding dynamics are enough on its own, which I know you're not saying that, but just kind of want to be clear there in terms of like my ideal version of a new chain flourishing enables that serious real world money coming on. And it takes a lot of trust in a chain because you're tying a business dynamics and a business model that is actually venturing out there in other areas and not just operating on chain. It's less protection for entities
and
coming into the
these
space.
People are going to be using all these new fancy protocols. It's just nice to have them to say, hey, look, we've got
for sure
quote unquote serious builders, which I know it's all fun and games in crypto land, but people also like to see, that you've got the rails built, you've got your lending protocol, you've got your whatever. Whether or not they use them, people look in and say, well, is there any innovation happening? And who knows, maybe we get some cool AI stuff. Maybe we get some cool, I heard about like a DeFi project. I've been hearing about all these other real world asset projects, a security token launching on PulseChain. People just need to keep building more and bringing their normie TradFi communities or just real world communities and putting them on PulseChain. And that's just going to make the difference of everyone's going to have heard about it in a matter of probably 5 years.
For sure. And what I'm seeing right now, because one thing you mentioned that I think is very, very apt, and that's it's easier to bring folks over from an Ethereum, right, than it is a Bitcoin, just because of the synergy between the two platforms. They perform, kind of similarly. And so I think as we go forward, that element of interoperability is going to be more and more important as we start venturing into these new areas and seeing, okay, well, if there are platforms coming to fruition, projects that are coming to the market with somewhat of an interoperable nature, and it's a growing area, right? Because it's tough right now. Cross-chain it's working in some ways, it isn't in others. But when we have projects that are coming and able to more directly pull from an Ethereum platform directly into a PulseChain platform, I think that those types of things will be more numerous as things start developing. But
new bridges,
one of the major
would be great.
What's that?
New Arbitrum, Binance Smart Chain, Solana bridges would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure, and they'll happen. I think for sure, and that's even coming out of that show. I think one of the key takeaways there, a lot of the ideation taking place, certainly on my part, and some of the meetings that I were in, was really on kind of building on that interoperability and looking to kind of ride the coattails of trusted sources and bring them into these new ventures where you're not biting off simple kind of one giant risk play, and it's more pulling from an already trusted source and compartmentalizing whatever vehicle or project is in place so that you're able to mitigate that trust. And I think that's the way we do it. And that is, I think that when we start looking at seeing how some of this building's taking place, it's a natural evolution for a fresh chain. And I think, right now, yes, again, to kind of bring it full circle, we're in memeville right now, and it's some people love it, some people hate it, some people are just okay with it. Whatever it is,
I'm entertained.
What's that?
I said I'm entertained by it. I'm not.
For sure.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It's funny, and I like seeing dog whiff butt memes all over Twitter. I don't know if I want to blast it on my feed, 30 times a day, but you take it as it comes. Hopefully that same energy is inflected within new projects that we have bringing to the ecosystem that are a little bit more, and I'll use the word serious, just a bit more substantial. Yeah. It's a lot easier to envision something not being vaporware, not having the potential of being a pump and dump. I don't want to be, in a situation where the ecosystem is built on a, not a bedrock. It's built, the house built upon the sand, right? I think we need some of those bedrock plays to come to fruition in order to start really bringing up that trust factor. And I think it's inevitable.
And here's something that you can do going off that point is a lot of people, they think, oh, I have to build some giant new protocol. And that's a lot of work. It's a huge endeavor to build a giant new protocol. If you want to build a bridge, man, that's a lot of work, a lot of risk and stress. Now, some people out there, like KDP comes to mind. Well, a lot of community members, we're also really good at reaching out to existing protocols and just saying, hey, I love what you've got here. You've got this multi-chain bridge. It'd be great if you could integrate PulseChain as well. Here's what we bring to the table. Sending a nice email and opening a dialogue. I just sent an email, for example, to Rocket X Exchange, which is like a multi-chain, multi-coin interoperability thing that I've used in the past. Worked great. I would love to see PulseChain on there because then you could take all that Solana meme coin money and easily bridge it over to PulseChain with cheaper fees as well. So we don't always need to reinvent the wheel, but hats off to the people that do want to take on those endeavors because it might be higher risk, high reward. But
for sure. And I think Richard Hart's talked about this himself, right? And some of that horizontal scaling that's, necessary a lot of the time, but reaching out, I think those are exact ways that it just makes sense to extend an existing solution into our chain. And I couldn't agree with you more there. I think that's going to happen more and more as well. It's easy to say as well, and I get it too. When people, we say this, and I feel like in this ecosystem, we tend to look ahead a little bit and make a lot of assumptions based on something is bound to happen. And I get it. For some people, it's hard to get behind, seeing this development so far hasn't really gone in that direction. It has. It's just been slow, as it should be. But I think that, like, having gone through so many cycles, having gone through so many different kind of ecosystem builds and rebuilds, it does definitely happen. You know, it's only a matter of time until, you know, some of this scaling from other projects or some of this, you know, soup to nuts development does take place on chain. It'll happen, and it'll have a chain effect, and it'll grow very, very quickly. And then, you know, as we know, as that huge amount of volume starts entering the market more and more and more, making its way into the chain,
I love your optimism. You know, I love your consistent messaging and your optimism, and the fact that you can see 1 year into the future and you're not so focused on 1 week or 2 weeks. I mean, we've seen if you go on Twitter on any given day today, people lose their minds if we go sideways for a month. People absolutely lose their minds. They capitulate. They give up. I think that's what we just got to do. Stay consistent, stay optimistic, keep messaging. And sometimes I wonder, you know, when I'm talking, how many new people am I reaching versus how many existing people am I just reaffirming, which is also very important to talk to the existing people as well. What's your take on how the best strategy to reach new people?
Well, this is where I'm going to differ from, you know, certainly a lot of other influencers, not yourself included, I'm happy to say, but there's a lot of maxis in this ecosystem, which is totally fine. I'm not a maxi. I like to think of myself as more of a value seeker, right? If I see the potential in something, I want to grab a piece of it, and I want to, you know, if I see that it's going to grow and it's going to have a decent return, then I'm interested in it. Now, I think we find ourselves in a bit of a catch because, you know, we see a lot of existing maxis within the RH ecosystem only ever talking about RH tokens, only ever proponents of you should only buy RH tickers, which in and of itself is necessary for a community because we need that core backbone of a community to keep that reaffirmation happening once folks are in through the door. However, it's a little bit dangerous to live in a world where essentially after a while, certainly in a smaller ecosystem like this, where the community is not too big yet, it turns itself into an echo chamber where everyone's just talking about the same tokens that they own. The bubble is alive and real, and it stops message. It contains that message. And I think that one of the most important things that we can do as a community, as influencers even, is look for other value plays, because like finds like. And as soon as, you know, this is why for myself, my private group, my channel, I do look at other value plays. I'm very, very interested in different ecosystems. There's a lot of really exciting things happening all throughout the crypto landscape. Even if you're not into memes, you don't have to look for memes. There are some value plays that have some massive potential. We're at the precipice of an intersection of so many different tech development coming to fruition all around the same time that there's a lot of options there. And I think that in order for the message to spread in the most intelligent way, that network effect has to be real, and the interaction. And, you know, that's not just reaching out to people on other chains and saying why this chain's better or this ecosystem's better. That's not what it's about, because you're going to be met with hostility. You're going to be met with resentment. You're going to be met with that kind of tribalism that, you know, a network or, you know, that network effect does not make. We're looking for intelligent conversations and interests and partaking in other value plays as well in order to have that more organic conversation. And it sounds obvious, but we've seen it. It doesn't tend to happen. And it's especially a little bit more dangerous when we live in a smaller community where smaller voices can often be heard pretty loud. And I get it, because it's a catch-22. You know, when you live in an ecosystem where, you know, at present, let's say, everything coming to fruition seems to not have so much of the obvious value plays, especially when we're in kind of meme territory. And so I get it. You know, you kind of want to stay vigilant and you want to keep your conviction to the core RH tickers. They're great products. They're built for a reason. But we also need to remember the reason they're built. PulseChain needs to be used. HEX needs to be used. HEX is a great store of value, a compounding store of value that, like, should be focused on, because it's where we want a lot of funds to end up. Ideally, we want that to be a safe haven come the end of the crypto market, right? PulseX, you know, it's burning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Even now, when we have relatively small volume on chain, to be honest with you, yeah, we've got a lot of intra-chain, right, you know, movement.
What is it, like almost 4% of total supply?
Something like that. Yeah, I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks, but we're seeing, people don't realize how much how much burn is taking place, how those tokenomics are set to succeed. As soon as we start seeing some, a little bit more volume coming in through the door, and we're going to see some massive price movements there on PulseChain itself, obviously. And so I'm all for the Richard hard tickers, but you've also got to be open-minded and start at least entertaining conversations from other communities if you want to avoid the toxicity, I guess, that comes along with that tribal mentality.
Yeah, you want to stay inclusive and not exclusive, which is fine. Like you can also talk about only what you like as well. I know a lot of maxis out there that they talk about what they like, but they don't shit talk everything else. And one of the things I've realized about, we can learn from Bitcoiners, for example, certain ones, not all of them, of course, is that it's very off-putting to say Bitcoin's the only thing, everything else sucks. So if you're out there, I mean, no shade on Dipcatcher, who a lot of people are like, oh, you're a trader, you're going to Solana, what the hell are you doing? He's just trying something new. He's trying to reach a new audience, and who knows if it's going to work out or not. Time will tell. But like I've said in the past, you got to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks sometimes. And he knows how to make a high liquidity ERC 404. I mean, you go look on the Solana charts, Gophers is actually like one of the top 10 on Dex Screener. So it's garnering attention, and we'll see how much can flood back into the ecosystem. But out of all the ideas, it's not the worst idea I've ever seen. I don't own any Gophers, but you might as well try something, right?
100%. And I think, and I agree with you. I mean, you can stay true to what you believe in. Often just having that open-mindedness, having that like engageability and non-toxic approach, the positives way outweigh any kind of stringent, mentality you may have. You can, just by being open and indulge in some of those other conversations, the flood of conversions that take place in situations, that's what a network effect is. That's what networking events are, And
still, though, at the end of the day, we don't have to, like, if something sucks, you don't have to go talk to a shitty project just because it's something different, right? There is a concept of just repetition. Do the hard work and repeat the same outbound messaging, even if it feels like you're banging your head against the wall, because sometimes you're going to go for a long period of time without seeing a direct reward. It might be many months in crypto before you see the gates come down, but planting all these seeds of making all this content, educating the people that do believe, it all adds up and it pays dividends in the future. It's just hard when you don't get that periodic reinforcement, right? So I think that's why people, some people need these meme coins to feel something, right? To feel something. Now, luckily, a lot of other people in the community also, they try to give back, right? They try to give and give value. But some people, that's how they stick around. They come in for the original narratives. They stick around because to do meme coin gambling. And that's fine because at least they're meme coin gambling in our neck of the woods for when everything else pumps. And hopefully they didn't dump their entire core bag.
Yeah. And it's often even more lucrative to gamble in an area that isn't quite so saturated, right? So I mean, I get it and it's great. And I think that, my point being also that everything's fine. It's just if it doesn't have that underlying level of toxicity coming with it, right? And you're right, and I get it too, that sometimes I think that we have, any new folks coming in or folks that have even been around crypto for a while, but somehow being wrapped up in all these kind of micro moments, they seem to want to consolidate an entire cycle into a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months. And that's not how it happens, Take me. I mean, my channel, I look at other ecosystems. I talk about other value plays that I see potential in. My conviction hasn't changed about PulseChain, hasn't changed about HEX, hasn't changed about PulseX. I never had the time horizon past the initial launch phase where we didn't really know what was going to happen. Maybe it shot to the moon, maybe it didn't. Once that launch phase finished and we kind of knew what territory we were going into, it's cliched, but when someone keeps saying zoom out a little bit, understand how these cycles work, look at the macro, realize the floods of money that are coming in, the timeline it takes for certain types of development to play, and then how that network effect usually takes hold. We never really expected to do crazy numbers right now. It would have been great, don't get me wrong, and we'll always remain optimistic that at certain moments in the market cycle, we'll be able to capitalize on, right? We'll see some rises and some drops, but it hasn't happened yet. But I think it will. I think it really will.
Yeah, it's like, do you think it's going to or not? At the end of the day, it's a 1 or a 0. If you don't think it's ever going to happen, dump it all and run away. That's okay. But we're here for the glory and the riches of the believers, right? And we want everybody to be on that same team, but not everyone's going to see eye to eye. Going back to the initial PulseChain, PulseX, and HEX, core coins, maybe even INC. I'll ask you this next, but I think the kind of some of the core value props, which I just tweeted earlier today, is that, for PulseChain, you could look at it like the spearhead. PulseChain is the narrative that everybody understands. Everybody gets an L1 blockchain. It's a clone of Ethereum 2.0. Everybody understands cheaper fees, and it's tied via liquidity to everything else. So if some other random thing pumps, PulseChain will pump too. Vice versa. If PulseChain pumps, everything connected to it, meaning PulseX and HEX and everything else, will pump too. Now you got PulseX as well. PulseX will naturally just have eternal buy pressure from the success and more volume coming in. So who cares if people are trading shitcoins all day long, because that buy pressure, that volume is increasing the buy and burn function. And then you've got HEX, which sometimes feels like the forgotten stepchild, right? Like the abused little redhead stepkid. And you wonder, is that ever going to come back, right? Is that ever going to come back? One thing I can say off the top of my head is that 4 years later, a lot of these pre-big payday stakes have been coming due. A lot of permadumpers have less permadump power. And I think we've seen so much capitulation and confusion and identity crisis in HEX that starting the chain over again on PHEX, it really does have a fresh start, in my opinion.
I consider it a cycle one token. To me.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, that you can mention EHEX, but yeah, PHEX has a fresh chart. So there's bullish things I could say about all of them, if you want to hear the glass half full. But what are your thoughts on all those coins?
I totally agree with you. I think that those unique selling points that were in place when they were created, nothing's really changed from there, right? We talked about the PulseX, tokenomics that are in place. I mean, it's all a volume play at the end of the day. And I'm going to say this too. I mean, look, we have the Bitcoin halving that is looming, right? Spoiler alert, everyone. After the halving, we have a lot of sell pressure that's going to come into play, not just in our ecosystem, in every single ecosystem, crypto-wide. But then when we start then getting in towards crypto summer, that's when a lot of that buy pressure comes in. That's when a lot of, hopefully, a lot of that development comes to fruition. And things that, were aimed at the HEX community, I guess, initially with like lower fees and all of that stuff. That's important for new developers. That's also going to be a big proponent in them coming to market as well. But as that volume starts coming in, we're going to see some big price movements. We have to. There's no way a cycle one, layer one, that's essentially has so much synergy with Ethereum in so many different ways, being a system copy itself. There's no way that doesn't reap the rewards, even in a minute way. I mean, even if we only see a fraction of the volume that we're anticipating, it's a darn sight higher price performance than what we're in right now. And I think that a lot of those, just because Richard Hart hasn't been streaming every single day like he used to, right? I mean, look, people seem to think that it's gone past the time where Richard's, kind of rolling up his sleeves and getting involved as much as he was. It would have been wasted energy. He's been saving that energy for periods of time where it's going to make the biggest impact. So I think he does come back and he does put and start reaffirming a lot of that same messaging that needs to be reaffirmed. I'm sure you've seen it too, because you tell people, hey, you know what? It's cheaper. It's faster. It's taking the strain off of Ethereum.
It's like, Jesus.
Well, yeah. You know what I mean. But I mean, you can keep reaffirming those things over and over again. And people have brains like goldfish in times where memes are pumping or another narrative comes in or someone tells you that we're already gone through the bull cycle. You got to start again every 5 minutes, and it's exhausting. I can only imagine how he must be feeling like since the last time this things came around. So yeah, I mean, when you look at HEX, for instance, this cycle, I do consider it. It's a cycle one coin. I know there's the argument that it's the same user base essentially. You can say the same thing with PulseX and PulseChain. It's a community built off a core of OG hexicans, right? And whoever was made aware of the ecosystem while the PulseChain sack was going on and all of that stuff, they're all cycle ones apart from EHEX. And so the same, we used to shout from the top of the mountaintop, that market cap is just a number. The reason why it doesn't, the amount of a price can go up isn't really determined by the market cap, or that's not the calculation that actually means, the price performance. But people forget about it. You're still seeing the same things now. It's just the rebuttal isn't shouted as loud now for some reason. Those rebuttals will be shouted loud again. It's just going to take some green candles and some excitement for that whole sentiment to do a kind of 180.
Right. And Richard not streaming lately, obviously legal ties are probably something to do with it, but you have to imagine he's probably considering the effectiveness of where can he be most effective. And right now it sounds like it's building and his case. Those two things probably outweigh streaming because look, he streamed during the last bear market, but you can only stream so much. You can't stream, I think, enough to overpower the greater market sentiment. So yeah, it would be pretty awesome for him to come back when sentiment changes in the overall markets, or as it's already been changing, but we're only on the cusp of the parabola right now. So,
sure. Can you imagine if he beats the SEC? I mean, that guy's going to be shirtless, beating his chest in front of us all. I would be too.
Can you imagine the dismissal just gets accepted? I highly doubt that, but how great would that be?
It'd be amazing. I think that it's probably better that happens a little further into the market cycle, though, because we still want to be in a better place to accept newcomers, right? We want to be in a bit of a better platform, I think, which we will be. I think price will trickle upwards to a more favorable position to launch from when it comes to start seeing some of those euphoric gains. But yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So, it's a matter of just filtering out, I think, the signal from the noise. There's so much noise out there, so many arguments, so many people just chirping all day long about stuff that won't matter when bull sentiment comes to our ecosystem in general. Like when overall sentiment from outside comes in. And when it's boredom and flatlining, you get a lot of infighting. You get a lot of, blaming other people of why we're not pumping or anything. It's just simple market cycles. I really believe it's just supply and demand hasn't turned its head here yet in the macro or in the greater, bigger picture. So what we do in the meantime is we argue about all the dumbest stuff. You look on Twitter, people don't even remember, but like everything that's ever happened in the PulseChain ecosystem, we've probably argued about stuff that's like so well accepted now. You remember Hedron? Remember that project? Remember when Hedron came out and everyone was like, is this bad? Like, is Hedron good or bad? And it was like controversial. Now it's just like, just another coin, bro. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's not, everything doesn't have to be this crazy drama, but that's what you get when prices are low.
That's what happens when you're locked in a room with the same folks over and over again, which is all the more important to have that network effect take place. You need new voices. You need, when you have just a really, in the grand scheme of things, I think we have a very strong community for the size. I really do. But I will say that, we do have a handful of real kind of influences, and most people probably follow them all within the space. And you see it sometimes. You see that the personal kind of emotions coming into play a little bit more so than you perhaps would if we had a much bigger community where there were a lot more external factors going on and not so much internal mechanisms making people react. And it's just a waste of time, but that's fine too. That's just going through growing pains as any community will be. And it's easy to say, and I get it, for anyone thinking that it's just they've heard the same record playing again and again and again with the optimism pushed down the road. And I totally get it. But from my perspective, I've been in the crypto space for a long time. I've seen this play out in a business sense too, with a lot of different kind of sectors. It does happen. And as long as the foundational elements that facilitate that are in place, and we have that, the fundamentals are in place.
Think about this like starting a business, right? A lot of businesses, they fail in early on because they give up. The businesses that do succeed are the ones that can keep going when nobody cares about them and keep on pressing on, even when they don't have that validation yet. And to see that long-term bigger picture, you're an entrepreneur, so you understand sticking with something for years. Whereas I think a lot of people come in here, they want to get rich in 2 months. So
for sure. And there's sometimes it's better to cut it off than to go through situations than, to keep beating your head against the wall. But this isn't one of those situations. And to me, it's clear. And I get it. It's just my opinion, and everyone has their own opinion, and whatever narratives you're listening to, whatever voices you choose to be influenced by the most, that's completely up to you. From as much of an objective perspective as I can take, looking through a lens into this, there's a reason why I'm going to, NVIDIA conferences and talking to my network of VC guys and bankers, because, and I'm having meetings about the PulseChain ecosystem because I see the value here. It's a non-saturated entity right now that is very lucrative for new folks coming in. There's just different flags that they're looking for to build those trust factors in place. And as we start exploring and seeing and highlighting some of those potential flags from the ecosystem itself, different ways in which, as we mentioned earlier, to compartmentalize areas of these kind of projects and tokens so that we're able to hedge into other chains if we need to kind of help kind of ride those coattails a little bit. All of this stuff is conversations that are taking place, but it also isn't something that comes to fruition right away with a new entity, unless you're a base, because you already are riding the coattails of your own backed, your spearhead company that's already been around the block 1,000,001 times.
Yeah, Coinbase has been around for what, 10 years? I mean, I remember when Coinbase only sold Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Those were the only 3 assets you could buy. There was a toggle. Which one do you want?
How much do you wish that you didn't sell any of what you had at that time?
I've made some regrettable decisions. I will tell you that.
I've got snapshots of my wallets I flick through sometimes. I'm like, I would be rich right now if I could tell the future.
And that's the thing, guys. That's the power of long-term holding. As long as these assets survive and the community continues to grow. If you don't think so, and people will say, well, look at Ripple, but Ripple by definition has to dump on you every single month. We don't have that. No. Ripple's a centralized company. We're just a community, grassroots. Like, imagine 5-10 years from now. It's hard to imagine PulseChain and HEX and PulseX being lower than they are today. It's just, it really is helpful to think about those early days. And in the early days of Coinbase, I'm sure there was a lot of people telling Brian Armstrong that he was never going to make it, or, oh, this whole thing isn't going to work out. You made a Bitcoin app. Isn't that thing a scam? Like, what the hell are you doing? And now he's got all the glory and riches because he stuck with it for 12 years. He is the #1 centralized exchange in America, maybe globally. He's basically got the CBDC in his pocket. He's basically, he's got all the money to run his fully functional L2 and get all the funding that he wants for it because he's got a profitable business that he made when nobody else believed. So.
A question for you, because I know you're very much on the technical side of things, or certainly more so than a lot of us in this space. For new projects coming in, where do you see the best opportunity for liquidity grabs? And what I mean is, when a new project comes to fruition, if you think about traditional markets, right, and the various banks that tend to lend liquidity to, a lot of that Forex movement, for instance, do you see a future where I guess liquidity comes into play in a similar way, where it's like entity driven as opposed to trade driven, if that makes sense?
Like, will entities be providing initial liquidity for projects rather than having to self-source it?
Exactly. Yeah.
It'd be nice to see that, right? It would. One of the things we want to see eventually with the PulseChain Foundation is somewhat of a formal grant program. Now, it's really hard when you're not a VC yourself and you rely on donations. Right. It's really hard to have anything structured like that. That's purely donation based. And I think in a bull market, if enough profits are rolled into future marketing endeavors and grant programs and through whatever the foundation or whatever else it might be, then you're going to see a lot more developers doing the traditional route of, oh, we're going to go with this chain because they're promising to bootstrap our liquidity. Now you've got launch pads that are trying to do that today. Yeah, the first one, Donovan's DIY investing, had a launch pad. It had a little hiccup at launch. A lot of people danced on their grave, but they're already back. I think they've already relaunched.
Solid to them, actually, going back and being able to fix that. I mean, that was a good move.
Yeah, they made everybody whole because that's not. I know Donovan. He's not going to rug pull and run away, right? He just made a mistake, and so he fixed it. Now you've got, I think, 2 or 3 other people talking about making competing launch pads. Look, I don't know which launch pad's going to win in the long term, but these things are kind of like the
competition's great.
Yeah, competition's great. Yeah. And launch pads, I guess, are the closest thing we have to getting bootstrapped liquidity without going to a venture capitalist. But hey, there's also nothing stopping you from going to an A16Z and saying, hey, I'd like to build on PulseChain, or I've already built something on PulseChain. Let me get funding. Like, because at the end of the day, everyone needs, if you want venture capital money, you are fully autonomous and able to go to a venture capitalist yourself and raise money. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. You have to have a good idea. You have to have a lot of drive, a lot of persistence, and you have to be a good builder and build something people want. But if you have all that, people will give you, venture capitalists will give you money. And so I wouldn't mind seeing more of that either. I wouldn't mind seeing more of that and less sacrifices, right? Because if you are serious and really believe in what you do, you shouldn't, I don't know I guess it's easier, right? It's easier to trick a bunch of retail into your half-baked idea being worth funding. A lot of that stuff, I don't know if it would fly in, Andreessen Horowitz land.
It wouldn't, and I don't think it will in crypto for very much longer. And relatively speaking, right? I mean, as we know, as soon as we can have all this volume coming in, it's going to be regulated through the roof before long. This is part of the reason why this kind of cycle is in a sweet spot of sorts, because there's a flip side to that as well, in that we're able to make a lot more gains probably than a fully regulated system is going to be able to generate.
Right. And it's not to say that the sacrifice model doesn't work. Fast Abdul's right. No, if you do have a good product and you do want to raise money, go ahead and raise it from the community. But it also allows anybody and everybody to do a raise.
That's the danger.
So we have seen terrible shit, but we've also seen pretty good stuff come as well. Like, for example, this Aura fork that Fast Abdul's working on, probably something serious, quote unquote, to keep an eye on, right?
For sure. And I agree. I mean, that sacrifice model works. It's just be careful who you get involved with, right? And yeah, for a lot of these things, you're not putting in your life savings, but also, there needs to be those trust kind of verifiers in place as well. And I think that's where a lot of the sweet spot that we're going to find ourselves in even months and months down the road, where we see people come into market who do have a more of a track record, who are coming with the potential or models in place that bring in some of that serious money we talked about in a way that is sustainable, and not just some of the smoke and mirrors, pray to God it hopes, it works and survive on its own tokenomics, which, yeah, some do, but some won't. Most won't,
Yeah. I'd like to see a lot more of from traditional gaming or traditional, I guess, AI companies or DPIN or whatever it is, building on Pulse, but they need to know about it, and they need to choose Pulse over something like a Solana or an L2. And I guess they need to know why, maybe an L2 isn't as secure to build on.
Yeah. I guess those are developer questions but yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you.
Money Gang says I'll fork Lido soon. We've got a team working on that, bro. It's actually already almost done. You could check out projectpi.xyz, projectpi.xyz. I know the two guys. I met them in Vegas. They're building it from the Atlanta Blockchain Center. It's a Lido rocket pool fork, actually. So they're forking the AVAX rocket pool and they're putting it on PulseChain. They've already got this early staking mechanism. So this is, guys, for people that don't know, liquid staking. So it allows people that aren't techie to be a validator. It's rocket pool, not quite Lido, but hey, then again, you have competitors for liquid staking on Ethereum. You could have more than one rocket pool fork on PulseChain too. So when we are close to the top, there will be many raises of all types. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could, first of all, you could look at, are the projects getting shittier and somehow getting more money? Second of all, are there random YouTubers coming out of the woodwork that are just cheerleading massive, maybe not the brightest? And then three, maybe are there celebrities coming on? There's all kinds of top signals that you can look at, but good point.
Yeah, we got to be careful of that too. We're no doubt going to see some of that stuff. And look, and I get it now, even meme coins are easy to get behind. You don't have to justify your choice. You say, this looks interesting. It's a gamble. I'm getting behind it. And you're not really held accountable for too much. It tends to get a little bit more tricky as an influencer, let's say, when you're lending yourself to a little bit more credibility play, right? Where someone's coming to fruition, you're analyzing unique selling points, not just we're rolling the dice on a gamble, but this is good because of X, Y, and Z. I get it. And it's easier to see. And as we get closer to the top, those easier plays, those easier memes, those easier bribe-like situations just come into full effect. I mean, I'm sure you get the same thing. I get hit up every single day by new bullshit projects that, it's not worth getting behind.
In general too. Most of that's just a straight up scam, but
of course.
Yeah. I mean, you should see my marketing DMs. So many people want to do marketing for me. It's crazy. It's just yeah. So yeah, what are we at? We're at an hour yet? About 55 minutes. Guys, in the chat, any questions you want to ask Ben here before we wrap it up? Because yeah, guys, I mean, look, if Ethereum can do a 14,000x, what can PulseChain do in that same time frame in 8 more years? If PulseChain is just a cheaper clone of Ethereum with the world's largest airdrop, with a better community, with better projects,
That's another thing too. You know, even thinking about longevity, I'd like to see some projects come to market that don't allow for, you know, the executive team's positions or allocations to be sold this cycle. Why not? I mean, if you're gonna, we live in a world of smart contracts, right? I mean, I know it's not exactly the most the most alluring thing in the world to build a, you know, build an entity that you're not able to sell come the top of a bull cycle. But if you're looking to put a business model to use, yeah, put your money where your mouth is, right? Any developers out there, if you're coming to market, tie yourselves up, lock your allocations down for a cycle and see how much trust you can build. Easier said than done, right?
Absolutely. Stick with it, guys. We're all gonna make it. Wag me. Question: legal situation. Will it affect PulseX, and HEX? I think you've seen the gist of how much it affected it. You can point to those 2 red candles on the chart, and you could see where the SEC protected you on the chart. You could see those very clearly, those 2 days. So I think after that, number one, we're in a bull market. Number two, RH has expressed a lot of confidence. I think the community's tides have already turned in terms of the sentiment about the case, right? Some people might still be scared. And if you are, obviously don't invest, but you should know that they can't shut off PulseChain, PulseX, and HEX. Literally cannot shut off. If they find Richard, it would have basically no effect on the core technology that you're holding. Yeah. You know, if you're worried about how other people are going to perceive it, then and if that's making you too afraid, then there's only so much we could tell you. But a lot of people have already decided that, number one, we're probably going to win. Number two, even a loss for Richard would not affect the tech in any way.
And there's everything in between. It's not like a full-blown win or a full-blown loss only. There's like kind of a win and kind of a loss and somewhat of a loss. And, you know, maybe it's a fine, a slap on the wrist. There's so many different variations of how that can play out that I don't want to jinx it, but it would have to be something extremely bad to cripple, you know, things for any long period of time. And like you say, when something's a completely separate entity, a fully functioning tech on itself, well, recovery is almost, you know, guaranteed, really, right?
That's right. Yeah, look, we've seen a lot of things get sued and survive through the SEC attacks. Yeah. So we're going to end on that note, guys. Thank you all for coming. Like, subscribe. Ben, thank you as always for coming on. I love the microphone you've got there. Good to know.
I know. I wanted to come out here into a bit more of a. I've been locked in my cave for a little while, so I wanted some light on me. And yeah, this is. I feel like a celebrity up here.
It's good to know that you support gay pride with the mic.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, nice house too, guys. Guys, look at how successful Ben is. Look at that background. It's not a green screen, believe it or not.
Anyone who watches my channel knows that I moved and downscaled because I want to capitalize on this crypto cycle. You should all be doing the same thing too. Get a part-time job, sell some shit, make as much money as you can.
Though. Your background doesn't quite look like downscaling, but yeah, so have I.
That's still a nice place.
Yeah. Do you tell anybody where you're at, or is that?
No, I don't. I haven't. Well, I haven't. I mean, I'm not that I'm against it, but you know, there's some crazy people out there.
Yeah. Why bother? All right, guys. Yeah. Too many crybabies, not enough OG with solid hands. Yeah. You got to diamond hand it, boys and girls. Diamond hand it. And we will see you at the top, hopefully. Later, guys.
See ya.
All right.